welcome everybody to another episode of the Totally Unqualified podcast. We have a amazing episode for you guys today because we have an incredible guest on with us, Mr. Adam Rank of NFL Network. Let's give him a round of applause, guys.
Woo!
Woo!
Oh my gosh. Thank you, fellow youths. Right? I'm one of the young, cool kids now because I'm on TikTok.
Exactly. 100%. 100%.
Is that not? I thought once I did that, I thought I was now right granted. In. No, fell like I got my skateboard. I was going to wear my hat backwards, but I look like a tool, like even more so than Steve Buscemi in that meme. Although you guys probably don't do memes. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about. It was something on this very ancient platform called Twitter that was way before your guys' time. So you might not be familiar with it, but your parents loved Twitter. You guys have never heard of it because you're great on TikTok. By the way, honestly, I'm humbled to be on with you because sincerely, I just started doing TikTok and I really enjoy it, but I enjoy seeing you guys and you're all killing it. Like, it's so cool. Like, it's refreshing and it seems way more positive. I had to shoo away some kid the other day because he left a little negative clown emoji. And I'm like, no, this isn't Twitter, jerk. You go back there, go to Facebook. That might be better for you. Like, you don't sully TikTok for me. This is so refreshing and so fun. And I want to have a good time and listen to cool music that I've never heard of. I tried to ask them. I know that I'm talking way too much. I am so sorry.
Fine.
No. This is awful. I got a lot of things to say. No, it's so humbling because like it still hurts me in my haunches when somebody is like, hey, like, I started talking about a Beastie Boys song and there's 21-year-old interns just looking at me. I'm like, you have no idea who I'm talking about. Like, do you? Like, I'm sorry, sir. Never heard of that band. And I'm like, okay.
Gosh.
And it's like the one, like sometimes like I was like mentioned Blink 182 and he's like, and I'm like, hold on. I was at the one of their last shows. No, all the kids look like you. Like there's a bunch of youths there. And I felt, I was like walking around and I'm like, God, I'm too old for the show. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm the same age as the band. I can be here. I was at the Palladium watching them open up for Real Big Fish. I'm the reason why you're able to come out and enjoy their music. So back off, everybody. So I feel like I'm now the entitled old guy. I'm the entitled old, the boomer who thinks he invented everything. So that's me. So 5 months from now, I won't be doing this. I'll be like, I'm not talking to you. I invented TikTok. I made it what it is today.
Yeah, you're going to run it pretty soon.
No, I gotta say you are killing it on TikTok. I've been seeing your videos and I love them.
You are.
You guys are the best. No.
Yeah.
Honestly, I sincerely, I remember talking to Jake about this. I'm like, you guys are great. Like, this is so fun. Like, I really love it. Like, what a fun medium. So I'm following. I'm just trying to keep up with you guys. You're great.
Well, we appreciate that. The one thing I will say about TikTok music is it will get old very, very quickly. You will hear the same song 100 times on your For You page, and you will never want to hear it on the radio ever again. You'll click right past it as soon as you hear it.
Yeah,
I can understand that. Yeah.
So just be wary of that.
Yeah. Blinding Lights by The Weeknd absolutely killed.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine. I can't imagine.
All right, let's get this Guess That Player going. It is obviously, since we have Adam Rank on this week, it's going to be an NFL player. So let's just get right to it. Gage, are you prepared? Gage, he actually started practicing for this, Adam. He started training this. All right, let's get right to it. I got some clues for you guys. All right, so right off the bat.
Do we only get one guess or can we, once you make a guess, are you done?
You can guess as much as you want.
Okay.
Yeah. First person to get it.
Hunter Renfrow.
Right. No.
Damn it.
Imagine right off the bat. I didn't say anything. It's like, damn it. All right. No, let's get to this. All right. So he is a defensive player. He originally committed to UCLA, then switched his commitment to Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Wait, do you have this or all right.
I'm starting. I'm thinking of the guy from Miami did that.
Okay. All right. Top 10 pick in 2018. Okay. Any guesses yet?
Leonard Floyd.
No. Nope.
DeAndre
Nick
Baker.
Leonard Floyd. No. Nope. All right.
Top 10 pick.
Second team All-Pro in 2020. So I'm going through those again. Defensive player.
Is it Roquan?
Went to Georgia. It is Roquan. That's Roquan Smith.
Roquan Smith?
There we go. You got it.
Hold up. Wait, hold up. Jake, before the episode, was trying to come up with people to have for the segment.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, should I do a Bears player? And then he was like, oh, wait, you guys already know that I'm going to pick a Bears player, so we can't do that anymore. And here he goes.
Reverse psychology. Reverse psychology.
Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mind games. I forgot.
Exactly.
No, well done. Floyd didn't go to Georgia, by the way. I think he went to Florida. I'm an idiot.
No, I think. Wait, what's Floyd? Floyd was also like 2016. I think he was a little.
I know. I knew when I said it. I'm like, no, it's not young because he wasn't drafted after Trubisky.
You were on the right track though. Bears linebacker, so that's good. All right, but you still got it. All right, so now the official rankings forever. Adam Rank will forever be featured on the official scoreboard. So it is me.
Oh, it's huge.
Luke. Yeah, me and Luke. I think you and I are tied at 5.
Yeah, 5.
And then Gage has 1, and Adam Rank now has 1. He is on the scoreboard, people.
You are the only guest that's gotten 1 so far.
Oh, nice.
You're the first guest. You have that honor now.
Well, it was a wheelhouse question for me. Like if it would have been about the cast of Riverdale, I might not have been able. I might have been a babe in the woods there.
Yeah, exactly.
You start doing trivia now.
All right. I believe Gage, you want to start this one off? Topic 1?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we want to start out with first is get into a little bit about you personally and your journey to where you are now. And I figured there was no better way to start out than one of your earliest pieces of writing. Please, Mr. Davis, keep your stinking Raiders in Oakland.
Yeah.
And just from then to now, how you've kind of gotten to this point, where you're at, and what that original piece was about. I'm sure we all have a great idea, but what made you want to write about that exactly?
A very opinionated kid, even as a child. And I do have to credit, my parents were huge sports fans. So I was kind of inundated with it. And I think a lot of the influence was coming from my dad. Like it was probably my dad's feelings of like, I don't want the Raiders taking away a game from us or whatever. So of course, you just kind of, you're parroting your parents a little bit. But it really was something that I was interested in. I always loved reading, Sports Illustrated and You guys don't remember magazines, but they used to be these things. It was kind of like the internet, but printed on paper that they would send it to your house.
Those
and you would read
kill
it.
Bugs with.
Yeah, exactly. You'd roll it up and swat a fly, and you could take it into the bathroom with you and it wouldn't burn your lap. So like that kind of thing. So like a little bit different, So I was always into that. I was always into comedy, like watching Saturday Night Live. My mom was very nocturnal. And on the weekends, I used to be able to stay up as long as we were watching Saturday Night Live or Saturday Night's Main Event, if you're a wrestling fan. And so, I was always kind of interested in those type of things. And then even when I graduated from high school and my parents, my 2 older sisters did not go to college. Nobody until me had ever graduated from a 4-year university. My parents were kind of like, you're going to college. And I'm like, no, I want to go do stand-up or something. They're like, no, you're going to college. So I went to Cal State Fullerton because it was close. It was cheap. They had a good baseball team. I went to go play. So I played baseball in high school. And I'm like, well, I'm going to college. I'll try to walk on at Cal State Fullerton. Huge mistake. Like as somebody who is like, if we were at a park right now, even as an old, you would see me and be like, oh, okay, Rank played. Like, okay, that's fine. He's got some skills. He can crow hop. He knows what he's doing. The difference between me and those guys at Cal State Fullerton, very quickly, you're like, okay, this is something I'll never be able to do. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate you having me. And then what about the head coach was nice enough. He's like, you should look into journalism. Actually, it was my friend's mother, because I was a business major. I didn't know what I was going to do. But my friend's mother, who was an educator, one Thanksgiving break was talking to me and she's like, what is your major? And I'm like, business. It sucks. I hate it. I hate all the classes. And she's like, well, like, why aren't you a journalism major? And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what do you, she's like, yeah, like be a sports writer or do whatever. And I'm like, you can go to college for that? Like, that's insane. And so investigated that, started doing it, writing for the school paper, covering high school sports for the LA. This is the longest story, I know. Every time I launch into this, people are like, Jesus, Rank, wrap it up.
No, keep going.
Appreciate it.
But so I started covering high school sports for the LA Times. It was cool. I got a connection with the NFL Publishing, which was based in Culver City, Los Angeles, actually. And I said, oh, okay. I sent them a resume. got an interview for an internship. Thankfully, the director was a former LA Times person. So my whole interview was like, hey, do you know Craig Stanky? Do you know Bob Rohr? Do you know this guy? And like, yeah, like just playing names, like know him. Yeah. Sit at her desk. Yep. Go out there, go to the high school, and just kind of talked about the thing. He's like, okay. And then I left and I'm like, he didn't ask me any real questions. Like this kind of, I don't know. And then a couple of weeks later, they invited me to come down and intern with them. And so I did an internship for them for 3 or 4 years when I was in college. I also did an internship with the Dodgers. So I was out there interning, obviously, my going to a college that costs like $35 a unit or whatever it is affords you the opportunity to kind of just like goof around and take all these internships. So I did that. So my final year of doing an internship, I had graduated and I was done. But the guy who had hired me, Chuck Garrity, who was my handler, so to speak, or the boss, my direct report, he was gone on vacation for 2 weeks. And I was of age, I think. I might have been 21. Probably. I was in a bar in Newport Beach, drinking a beer, talking to my friend. And I said, you know what? I still have my key card and everything. And normally at the end of the summer, there was like a pomp and circumstance. They would bring in Tito's Tacos. I would get some swag and I would get a little send off. I didn't get that. So I said, you know what? I'm going to show up because if nothing else, I'll get 2 weeks of paid. And I was making bank. I was making like $8 an hour. I thought I was a king. I still had a job busing or being a food runner at the Improv. So I was literally just thought I was so rich, just pocket full of dollar bills from all the servers tipping me out at the end of the night. So really, like I was living large and I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm showing up. See what happens. Show up that Monday morning. Key card works. The receptionist, Lacey, just said hello. I'm like, hey, good to see you. Walked back to my desk, hung out for 2 weeks. During that time, because I would always walk around and be like, hey, can I help? You'd go to all the editors. You'd be like, hey, can I help you out? And anything I could do. And there were a couple editors who were kind of lazy asses who loved to give me their work. There were 2 guys that just like, I knew, like they're probably the reason why I'm here today. Is because this guy, Peterson, was like, yeah, hey, as a matter of fact, like we're working on a trading card set right now. We need somebody to go out and research some quotes and look through these books. And I'm like, I'm your guy. So when Chuck Garrity came back from his 2 weeks, he saw me and he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, Peterson, man, he's got me working on this trading card set. I do a lot of research. And he shakes his head. He's like, Peterson. He walks off. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in. All right, now I'm in the system. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then about 3 months later, he shows up at my office door. Like I had an office, although it was so tiny. Like if you had a pencil in each hand and reached your arms out, you could touch both walls. That's about how big. Like it was narrow and it was long. And so he comes in. He's got a little Post-it note. He's like, hey, by the way, he's like, you can't intern forever. And I'm like, oh, this sucks. I was so close. He's like, so we're just gonna hire you, and here's what you're making. We're going to bump you up to $11 an hour. And I'm like, oh my God, what? What am I going to do with all this money? And then, so I started working for NFL Publishing, and long story longer, I worked for them for years. They closed down the publishing company to start a little outfit called NFL Network. So I hated NFL Network for a couple of years until I got rehired by them. And then I loved it. And then I worked the news desk. It was so crazy. I was working the news desk. And I was, because when you go through your interview of like, hey, like, because I was just an editor, like you'd go through copy, like game store, like the AP stories, put them on the website. They're like, hey, what is your long-term goals? I'm like, I just want to be an editor, man. That's it. Nothing else, just an editor. And then I'm hired, and a week later, like, I want to write. I don't know how it's possible to get on the NFL Network. I want to be on TV. I want to, like that kind of thing. Yeah. I was in there, baby. I got a desk, so it's too late. I want to do it, but they made a compromise with me. They said, look our fantasy department is one person. Like if you edit all the fantasy copy, then we'll let you write fantasy copy. And I'm like, sold. Yeah, I'm in. I want to do all this. Do that. And then this is back in the day when they started doing like a la carte videos, one-on-one. And they're like, hey, you got kind of a, you do stand up, like you got a little bit of a presence to you. You're like, do you mind helping out with these things? And I'm like, of course, like boom. And then, so from that, we went from like on-demand videos. It was Lindsey Rhodes and Michael Fabiano, who you can hear on the Sirius XM. Yeah. It was us three doing these videos. The following year, we did a Sunday morning show, and that was Fabs, Michelle Beisner, Dave Damashek. The following year, it was a full-on NFL Network show. And then a decade later, you know, it's this huge show on the NFL Network. People love it. People are buying cameos of me. Like, it's the stupidest thing. Like, I don't even, like, it's dumb every time I tell this story. I'm like, I don't know what, like, it could have been so easily derailed at any point during this entire story, but you know, that is what it is. And now I admire what you guys are doing, because you're taking a new path as well, and just going out there and doing what you got to do and getting in front of all these people. So it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
Did you expect it to be that long? That was like 30 minutes. I think. Sorry. What an innocent question that just, you're like, oh my God. So you were born in Park Ridge. Yep. Okay. Please.
I think it's awesome because it's already full circle, because you were the boomer that created Twitter, but you're actually the boomer that created NFL Network. So
yeah.
You know, me and Eisen, I think, are the two, you know,
yeah.
Like, you credit it, like, and Dion, like the three of us, the Mount Rush. No, I remember one of my greatest days being a part of the NFL Network. I was in the parking lot, and Michael Irvin was driving by, and he honked his horn at me, and it startled me. And Michael was just waving. He was like, hey, Adam. I'm like, me? Like, is he not looking at, does he think I'm Schefter? Like, what's going on? Like, Michael Irvin? Like, I grew up watching this guy play football, and now he's my colleague, like honking the horn, like, hey guy, hey coworker. Oh, it's crazy. One time he almost broke my arm too. Can I tell you this story?
You got it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I love Michael Irvin. Michael Irvin's I remember when I first started there, this was before the car horn. He comes up to me and he's like, I'd met him once, and it's no big deal. Like, you meet somebody, like, he's a huge star. You don't have to remember my name. But he came up and he goes, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. And I go, it's Adam. He's like, Adam, I'll never forget it again. And he never has. So it's always cool. And I was like talking to him, you know, like Hall of Fame, like, you're working with a Hall of Famer. If you're not talking to him about football, then you're not, like, what are you doing? Yeah. So I go up to him one time. This was actually at the Hall of Fame in Canton. And I said, hey, I go, Michael, let me ask you a question. Because I know he's probably never going to go into the Hall of Fame, but this guy was the most annoying player that you played with because he was so good. What about Jay Novacek? I think he was awesome. And Michael grabbed my arm. He's like, Adam, let me tell you. And he's like shaking my arm. He's like, Adam, there was Troy, there was Emmett, there was me. But when we needed that first down, we'd go to Jay Novacek. And I'm like, I'm dying, but it's like, he was so impassioned by it. And you could just tell he loves Jay Novacek so much. And it's like, that is just one of the coolest things about Michael Irvin. Like, he just loves football and loves everything about it. And like, there was a time in the newsroom, this was 2007, the Patriots were going undefeated, and it was a Saturday, and he comes into the newsroom. They just had their game day morning production meeting for the next day. And he's like, I want everyone here to know I would trade my Hall of Fame to have a perfect season, because that is immortality. You cannot be better than perfect. And this goes on for like 10 minutes. And I was literally, not figuratively, literally in tears. Like, it was so like this person, like, he just loves football so much that it's infectious.
And you ready to run through a brick wall?
Oh my gosh, I was ready. I'm like, I'll go play tomorrow, coach. Go.
I mean, he's right. We still do talk about that Dolphins team. They're the only one.
Yeah.
The only one. Yeah. Because like the Patriots blew it. And
now with more games being added on, there's probably not going to be another one at least anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. I mean, we still talk about David Tyree just because of that almost perfect season too. That totally irrelevant player that was David Tyree, just because he broke up a perfect season.
What would you rather be? Would you rather be David Tyree or someone like Tim Brown? Like, who's a Hall of Famer? Like, I was one of the best in the game, but David Tyree's like, helmet catch. Nah, that's going to live forever.
I can't pick anybody that went to Notre Dame, so I would go David Tyree.
Fair enough.
I hate them so much. Anyway,
that's fair. We're a Northwestern family, so you're good.
Oh, I'm a Penn State. I go to Penn State, so.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys, Northwestern's fine. They're fine. Okay. We beat them a lot, so we don't have to worry about that.
Doesn't matter.
So I mean, the next question we were going to ask is a lot about like how to get into sports media, but I think through that story, you kind of explained the road. But if there's any advice you want to give to anybody out there, as we all kind of, dream about going to sports media, any advice you could give to anybody out there that's listening about, your path and what you wish you knew back then?
Well, I mean, you guys are doing it. I mean, the game has completely changed, for my story, which I don't feel is that long ago, but kind of is a little bit. Yeah. But I mean, like, there's still, the old school way of going to doing high school preps for a local paper, making $40 to $50 a game, covering sports, or doing things like that, internships. I remember, who was it? Jane Slater, who walked into it like last year when we were talking about internships. And I said, it's important for people to do internships. And everybody was like, well, not everybody can do it. And, it's not. And I go, whoa. You're getting it. Like, I agree with you. It's like, to me, it's always like the whole notion of tipping. Like, I think tipping is stupid. Like, why are we letting the employers off the hook? I think it's a dumb, antiquated system. I don't believe in it. You should pay the workers a fair wage. If we've not learned anything over the last 20 months, we should be paying our people livable wages. Yeah. However, I still live in the existing world where, yes, I have to tip that person. I will probably tip them 25%. So I understand what everybody's saying. It is wrong that you have to do internships, and it sucks. And there's nothing I can do about that. But if you have the opportunity to do internships, I would certainly suggest that. And I know it usually comes from a place of privilege. I know what I'm talking. I understand, and I agree. But also, the great thing about social media and everything that you guys are doing is you're in sports media. Like, I consider you a colleague. Like, we're all doing this together. Well, no, we're all doing this together. We're creating content, and eventually, we're breaking down the walls eventually. And I don't know if you have sponsors or anything like that, but that's on the horizon. At some point, these companies and these brands are going to be like, well, why am I going and paying this corporation? Why am I paying the NFL all this money? I can go to Jake and just pay him, and he's speaking to people directly, and he's got a huge audience, and he's got a huge following, and you also have a following of the correct demographic of what they are looking for. So for anybody who wants to be in sports media, you're in sports media. Like, you're doing it. Once you start a TikTok, once you start a YouTube show or a podcast or anything like that, you're in sports media. The only problem or the only difference is you're not working for peanuts for some faceless, media conglomerate. You're working for yourself, and your success is going to be dependent on you and going out there and trying to establish relationships and getting access and doing everything like that. So for me, I would just say, stay on that grind. I think the most important thing, though, is trying to pick one. Like, there's so many social media platforms, is trying to pick one that you think would be your specialty. Like, that's going to be the one that you hone in on. Like, if like Tom Grossi is like a YouTube guy, and somebody's like huge on Twitter or anything like that, it's like finding what your niche is and just running with it and doing what you're doing. I mean, you're already doing it. So you're on the right path. Keep going. Yeah,
I was about to say, two people that I look up to are Tom Grossi and Brandon Perna. I believe you've gone on a show with both of them before. They've definitely started to pave the way for this sort of, social media aspect of sports media, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, why would you go, if you're a Packers fan, why would you go anywhere else but Tom and Aaron Nagler and those guys? Like, they're part of you, like, I see these photos. And it makes me sick because they're Packers. No, I'm just teasing. They're honestly delightful people. I love them. Yeah. But like, you see photos, when they were at Packers training camp this year, and just like, they're there. Like, I don't need, like, and it's tough for somebody like me. Like, if I'm part of the national media, and I understand this. Like, I wrote a series called State of the Franchise, which is cool. It's like good for casuals who are just like, I just want to keep up with every team. You're not nuanced. But if you're a hardcore fan of the team, you're going to want to read the people who are there. I don't like, if I switch it to like baseball, like, I'm not really concerned with what Ken Rosenthal is saying about my favorite baseball team, I'm going to the local kid who's going to the games and is blogging about it, or he's making a podcast about it. Cause like he knows and he follows the team, and he probably knows the 40-man front and back, knows all the AA and single A prospects. And I think that's the way that this is obviously going.
Yeah. 100% agree. And Adam, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I don't want to make you feel old, but like I've been watching you since I was a kid, and this is just such a cool moment for me. I'm sure it is for Jake and Gage as well.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So
we're like, who is this guy? What are we? Who's this guy who's joining us? Is this the 3-13 guy? Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, so you knew we were gonna. That's the first thing my friend said to me. I was like,
3-13 guy?
Yeah. I was like, guys, this is so cool. Like, I also like. By the way, my first, I got into football like I want to say 8 years back, and I wanted to learn everything about it. So I spent the entire summer. Every single day on my television was NFL Total Access, everything. Just I watched NFL Network every single day. And then by the end of the summer, I went into that new school year. Just I could list the third string offensive tackle on like the Cincinnati Bengals. Like I knew fucking everything that was going on. And like it's props to you. You gave me a ton of fantasy advice while I was on there. Just watching you guys do all that. Like just calling me a colleague is just it's also a surreal moment for me. So it's weird how this has come full circle. Yeah.
It's literally the truth. Like we're all just trying to make it and trying to keep, and it's obviously it starts with a love of sports and everything like that. But like we're doing it. Like this is us. We're like this is what we do now. We'll be, we'll be at a Super Bowl someday. Just being like, hey man, like what are we doing today? Let's go collab. Let's go to. Am I saying that right? Is collab?
Collab.
I gotta make sure. Like I don't know. That's the problem is my kids aren't old enough for me to lean on yet because they're 6 and 3, so they're not TikTok age or anything. Sort of useless, like no disrespect to them, but it's like, you guys aren't really helping me with my career yet. You're in a weird age. Cause there's like producers that I work with who are like, they'll say stuff like that. And I'm like, and they're, 60 or whatever. I'm like, what did you just say? And they're like, oh yeah, my daughter's in high school. So of course I know who this, I'm like, oh, okay. That all makes sense.
Well, let me extend a personal invitation that if you ever need anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. We got your back.
Yeah, we could be anytime.
All right.
I'll be feeding you new lingo every single day. I'll just DM you like, hey Adam, this new word just came out. Just want to give you a quick definition.
Now you're gonna set me up. So I got to make sure that I back check it.
Just like every video you see, I just want you to comment, nah, he tweaking, and you're good. You're good.
Nah, he tweaking. I've seen that. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Makes no sense.
Oh my God. We had no idea what was going on either.
I want to almost do that to one of my producers. Like one of our showrunners is kind of that way, like disattached, but I think he trusts me enough. Like, dude, we got to do this segment called Now We Tweaking. Like it's so hip. Cause he's like,
love that honestly.
It's like,
they would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't think, it's probably not going to make the air of NFL Network, but that would be like a cool video. Like, hey, now he tweaking, kind of like he got jacked instead of the jacked up thing.
Yeah,
it's like plays like where somebody can take either one of you three can take this idea and be like, yeah, just find the plays and just string them together. Like, now he tweaking. Like here it goes. Tua Tagovailoa drops back. Devontae Parker. Nah, he tweaking.
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna write that down really quick.
Write that down.
Yeah, get it in the notes. Get it going in the notes
for a totally unrelated reason. Yeah.
Well,
so
Adam,
go ahead.
This is a sports show. So got it. We do got to talk to sports. I'm gonna start it off. I'm gonna start off with your Chicago Bears. I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, obviously.
I'm aware.
Had to rep.
I'm aware.
I want to know how you feel about the quarterback situation right now. Obviously, Matt Nagy has named, I don't know if he's officially named, but he said that Andy Dalton is going to start week 1. Do you believe that's the right decision? What's going through your mind there?
Yeah, it's a promise. And again, apparently Andy Dalton is like my 6-year-old. We're all stupidly say something like, yeah, of course we'll go to the Angels game when they get back in town. And then she's like, hey, remember when you said, I'm like, oh man, you took me for serious there. I just wanted you to go to bed. Yeah, he's beholden to Andy Dalton and he's afraid to hurt his feelings. Apparently he doesn't care about the feelings of the other 52 members of that team, of the city of Chicago and Bears fans around the globe who would love to see Justin Fields out there. And I know it's funny. Like people are like, well, you don't want to start him week 1 playing a tough defense. You're like, hey, we're playing the Browns in week 3. Like, when are we only going to start him against Detroit? Like he's going to play 2 games this year. Detroit. That's it. I think we play the Texans too. Like, no, like you got like, he's good. Like it's fine. He went up against Clemson, Alabama. He's fine. Like he'll go out there. He'll do well. And they're like, the offensive line sucks. It's like, okay, so shouldn't we have the young guy who can run and avoid that shit? Like that's the guy that we should want out there, right? Or do we want the guy who's just going to stand in the pocket and get his bell rung? Why don't we just prepare to have Justin Fields out there ready to go? And it's so disappointing. I equated it today to being like a kid who has wanted a bicycle for like years. And finally one Christmas morn wakes up and there's a brand new bicycle. You're like, oh my God, this is the greatest gift that has ever been bestowed upon me. I can't wait to get out there right now. And then your parents are like, no. You can ride it in July. You're like, what the, why? We promised your neighbor that he was going to be able to ride it for a couple of weeks before you got, I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And all the other
kids. You got to watch the neighbor ride it. So then you can learn how the neighbor rides it, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can get all his tricks and then just ride it better than the neighbor. Got it. Yeah.
And I'm out there. I'm already at a skill level of TJ Lavin. So is that what TJ Lavin is famous for? Like, I don't know. I was thinking about that the other night. Like TJ Lavin, because obviously he's the host of The Challenge, which is a show you guys was big in my era. So don't worry about it. In any event, I'll move on. I think that Justin, so sorry. I'm trying. I have this earnestness to try to seem cool, and I'm like, these kids just don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
You already are.
You're cool you already no matter what.
Yeah, it's already like so stupid. Like, oh, you guys watch The Challenge? Like, nope. Sorry, boomer. Like, okay. Which is fine. I'm trying to see. I can actually look out this window. I don't know if my son took off. My 3-year-old. He's a house of fire. In any event, house of fire or fart, whatever. I said what I said. But I think that you really need to put him out there. You know, we've been waiting so long for this moment because in my lifetime, the 3 best Bears quarterbacks of my lifetime were McMahon, who I barely remember, Jay Cutler, and Walter Payton on the halfback option. And that's the list. That's where it stops. It's like every Packers quarterback for the last 25 years was probably better. Like Don Majkowski would be like the best Bears quarterback of the last 50 years.
Matt Flynn.
Matt Flynn, maybe. Matt Flynn. No.
Poor Matt Flynn. Matt Hasselbeck.
Hasselbeck. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, they had Brunell. They had Kurt Warner. So like, that's God, that is insane. But yeah, so it's one of those things like, I just want him to play. Like we've waited long enough. Like we might not go to the playoffs again this year. You're not going to lose your job. Like Nagy's not going to lose his job if Justin Fields goes out there and is good. If the Bears are scoring 35 points a game, Justin Fields has a Justin Herbert-like season, he's not going to end up like Tony Lynn. He's going to get another year because he's the offensive mastermind who is making this stuff happen. So for me, it makes no sense. Like, I understand you made a promise to Andy Dalton, but like people break promises all the time. So go out there, put in Justin Fields, do what you got to do, and let's roll.
Yeah, I mean, I think the selection of Fields sort of like gave the juice to Chicago sports fans, like something they haven't seen since maybe like Michael Jordan, like back in the day, right? Like they haven't had this sense of excitement. So it makes me feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect between Matt Nagy and the rest of the team because the team wants Fields to play. They don't want to see Andy Dalton. They don't want to be, forced into mediocrity. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, nobody hates Andy Dalton, but you're like, hey, we still want to win football games. Mm-hmm. And I know like part of the reason I believe that you go with Andy Dalton, and it's such like Nagy's not that old. It's like, dude, why are you thinking like this? Like, hey, we want to go with the veteran. He gives us the best chance of the win. I'm like, I don't think that he does. Like, I don't think that I know Nagy is so beholden to what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. But I think Alex Smith was a much better quarterback than Andy Dalton was. And Alex Smith had played in that system for a number of years. Like, it makes no sense.
It's not like new to the team.
Yeah, it wasn't like Dalton's been leading the team to the playoffs in 2 out of the last 3 years. Like, no, we got a guy. We got a new guy. Let's just go with him.
Yeah.
It's like betting on black almost. Like he's so insistent that that is the correct path, or that he's just taking this 50-50 shot that all of a sudden it's just going to work out for them the same way that it worked out for the Chiefs. But really, I mean, it's doing nothing but making Bears fans hate him. Do you think that he is, like, Nagy is the biggest part of the problem, or do you think that he even makes it through the season as the coach if Andy Dalton is the starter and doesn't have success?
Yeah, I've been one of the more bigger proponents of Matt Nagy. Like, I mean, honestly, like if you look at the situation over the last 3 years, and I'm willing to say that Mitch Trubisky was not a very good quarterback. And I know people will be like, well, what about that preseason game? Like, it was so funny that like people who are nuanced in sports were making the assessment like, oh, so maybe maybe Mitch Trubisky wasn't the problem. Like, what the F are you watching? Like, obviously they're doing well. Mitch Trubisky making one read and making a throw, and if it's not there, he turns and runs. Like that, I've seen that shit for years, and that wouldn't work in the regular season. It's fine for preseason. Obviously, Brian Daboll actually did the right thing, because if Matt Nagy does get fired at the end of the season, the Bears are going to be like, hey, remember when Brian Daboll was here with Mitch Trubisky and he made him look like a superstar and schemed him up in a preseason game? Daboll probably gets hired as the next coach of the Bears. So that was wise. And this is the kind of stuff that happens. We see like the 49ers did it too. In Trey Lance's first game, that play that he hit that huge touchdown on, that was a total scheme. Like that's a scheme against a vanilla defense, because it's kind of like playing Madden on rookie mode, where you're like, you know that 4 verts is going to work. They're just scheming up to get their players in the best possible position. Even the touchdown that Justin Fields threw against the Dolphins, that was a scheme play. Like they schemed that up perfectly. So, but the point is that he is still the best option. And I don't know why. I don't know what Matt Nagy gets into his head. Like there's a lot of things like not cutting Javon Wims earlier, like keeping Anthony Miller around too long, like some of the dumb penalties, like some of the things that people have had criticisms for with Matt Nagy are now you're like, God, people are starting to have a point, even though they've made the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years with poor quarterback play. It's like, it's getting hard to defend them unless the Bears come out and put up a 30 burger on the Rams. And you're like, oh, wow, maybe this offense does work. But unless that happens, then, you know, the questions surrounding Matt Nagy are just going to continue to dog him.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Rams there, which is kind of a good segue into the next question that we were going to ask you. If I can find it here. Hold on one second. I just totally unprepared for this. That's fine. All right. I'm just going to get to it here. All right. So what do you think of Matt Stafford on the Rams? Do you think he's going to have this Patrick Mahomes-esque season? Now he's got the offensive genius that he's always hoped for. Now he's got the Patrick Mahomes level talent, and finally he's on the team that's going to exploit it. Do you think he's going to have this, you know, record-breaking season, or do you think, you know, it's going to be a little lesser than that?
I think he'll be really good. I think we've seen we've seen Matthew Stafford be excellent before. Throw for a lot of yards. He's approached or even hit 5,000 passing yards in the season. That part of it's not going to go away. He's going to do very well. I think the thing though for the Rams, what they do with their offense is like every time they get inside the 5-yard line, like they always run the football. Outside of the New England Patriots, nobody runs the ball more than the Rams once they get near the goal line. I don't know if that was a thing because Jared Goff was there and you're like, we don't trust this guy. Let's just run it. Like, let's be safe as possible or what have you. But I think we're going to see Matthew Stafford unlocked a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be like Peyton Manning going to the Broncos, or even I think what we're kind of going to see is something similar to what we saw with Tom Brady last year, where it might take him a couple of weeks to really get fully operational and get going. But once he hits his stride, I think they'll start to go on a little bit of a streak. I think they'll win because their defense is good and should carry them through the first couple of weeks. And then eventually he's going to get into a groove and move forward. So I really do. I'm a big proponent of Matthew Stafford. I think that watching him in the NFC North, I think he's tough as nails. I think he's a good quarterback. I think that organization in Detroit has not been one of the best. I think they just kind of have wasted his talent all these years. So I'm kind of excited for Matthew Stafford. I've bought into it. I've bought into the hype. But I think Sean McVay is also in a very similar situation to Matt Nagy. It's just a little bit more like he's more accepted because he did take his team to the Super Bowl. But if this thing with Matthew Stafford doesn't work out, like if it's kind of like the same old, like it's not really moving forward, like you're starting to run out of excuses. There's only so many because like you pretty much had your pick of quarterbacks. There were guys out there who were available that you could have gone after, but you decided very early that you were going to go with Matthew Stafford. So this better work.
Especially with them trading away all their picks and stuff like that and going with we'll take the veterans now. That's definitely concerning if this thing doesn't work out for them.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of capital to rebuild that team if something goes south.
Exactly.
He's such an easy guy to root for. I mean, he's been so good for such a bad team for such a long time. He definitely deserves to be on a contending team, to say the least. So I want to get your thoughts actually real quick on the new running back that they just acquired, Sony Michel. I obviously, like you said, Sean McVay and the Rams offense, they love running the football. I don't know how well Sony Michel is going to do, especially what we've seen in him in New England so far. What do you think about Sony Michel?
Well, he won the Super Bowl for him, so the Rams are very familiar with what he can do on a big stage. And really, I don't know that it was necessarily a knock against him that he wasn't playing that well, other than the fact that the Patriots now just have an embarrassment of riches at the running back position, and they needed to move him. And the Rams needed somebody behind Darrell Henderson, because one of the reasons why everybody was so excited about Cam Akers this season was the way he finished last year, especially in the playoffs. And part of the reason Cam Akers was able to excel was because Darrell Henderson was nursing an injury. And we've seen it already. Darrell Henderson still nursing an injury. So they need somebody who's kind of a veteran presence behind him, because Xavier Jones could be good. And the kid from Maryland, Jake Funk, could also at some point be serviceable down the line. But they needed somebody who is a veteran presence who could help them along. And I think Sony Michel is a pretty nice option there for what he is, for the role that he's playing. Like, I think he's perfect. I think that's, again, I would fire in on Sony Michel fantasy wise more than I would Darrell Henderson now. I think that's the biggest thing to me. And I think it's also important to note, and I'm sorry, Jake, to have to bring this up, but Rashad Penny, Sony Michel, both drafted ahead of Nick Chubb. And I don't know what people were watching. And like, I know that I'm not a draft person, although I will harangue Daniel Jeremiah. Be like, I think this guy's good. And he'll be like, okay, Rank. But I'm like, no, like, look at Nick Chubb was so good. Like, watching a lot of Georgia games, because for whatever reason here on the West Coast, we always got a lot of Georgia games. And I'm like, Nick Chubb is like the best running back of this class.
Yeah.
And when Rashad Penny, I'm like, well, I guess if you got to draft a San Diego State guy, why not? Over the dude who's dominating the SEC. Yeah. That makes sense. And listen, no disrespect to Marshall Faulk, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
And then Sony Michel, you're like, he wasn't the best player on his team. How do you not? I'm like, I don't know. For as great as the Patriots have been over the years, I swear to Great Caesar's Ghost, they make some dumb picks. And that one stood out to me. And I got to go back. I got to go back through my archives. I'm like, because I'm pretty sure I brought that up at some point.
Yeah, they haven't been able to draft skill position players well for like the greater half of the last decade. So
N'Keal Harry over Deebo Samuel and AJ Brown.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was terrible.
Countless.
Yeah. Yeah. Also DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
That's right.
Everybody was kind of dumb on that pick. I don't know how people couldn't see the
that was the
DK.
most that was the most over analysis I've ever seen with a player. They're like, yeah, he's big, he's built like the Hulk, he runs 4.3, he can catch it over anybody, but he doesn't run routes well, so we can't take him in the first. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you just described Calvin Johnson and Julio. Like, well, Julio's a little bit of a better route runner, but like, what kind of over analysis is this? You guys are overthinking yourselves to death, and that's what happens. And what happens when you do that is you get J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. That's what happens.
There it is, Eagles.
Take that.
And then Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Like,
oh my gosh,
bro,
that's brutal.
And I knew that is actually one. I actually do have the file on my phone somewhere where I pull it out, because I'm like, yeah, I said this was going to happen with Justin Jefferson. And some dude, this of course was happening on Twitter. Like, you never said that. And I'm like, oh, here's the receipt.
The receipts. Boom.
Oh my God, that was a great one. I mean, because I obviously have to wear 3 and 13. And by the way, looking back on that, the fact that I didn't have RotoWear mock up a rank 313 like an Austin 316 shirt. Adam 313. That was really I missed out on a lot of money there.
If you do that, we will buy it and wear it on the show. I promise you that.
Would it still play? I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. The first thing my friends told me when I said I'm getting Adam Rank on the show is, oh, the 3 and 13 guy? Is he like the guy that thought the Niners are going to go 3 and 13 when they went to the Super Bowl? I was like, yes, that guy, but he's done a lot of other stuff too. But
doesn't matter. That's your that's like fumbling in the Super Bowl. Like if you could be like the best player. I'm trying to think of like a great player who had a terrible moment in the Super Bowl. It's usually
like
Peyton
passing
Manning.
on the 1 yard line.
It's like passing on the 1 yard line. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you already have a Super Bowl, Super Bowl, like, okay, like that sucked. And it also, the person that was the worst for was Pete Carroll, because, at some point you'd be looking back at history and being like, okay, he was a back-to-back Super Bowl champion. He won all those titles at USC. And I know that there was like, oh, but everybody in college cheats. Don't act like, don't clutch the pearls. Oh, Reggie Bush got a house? Like, oh, I'm sorry. He got a house for his family.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're fine. He would have been gone. Like he would be in the conversation for one of the best coaches of all time. And if Seattle ever does win another Super Bowl, Pete Carroll would be in that conversation. And I think that's part of the reason why they weren't so hip to trade Russell Wilson, because I think Pete Carroll, who's actually older than Bill Belichick's like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to coach forever, and I don't know if I want to develop another quarterback. So let's keep maybe the best quarterback in the game right now. If not top 3.
Yeah. And just when the Seahawks get to first round picks, like you mentioned, Rashad Penny, I just ignore them every year. I'm just like, I don't care who our first round pick is. He's going to be a bust. Who are the 3rd and 4th round picks? Yeah. That's where the Seahawks strike. And it's like, cause it's been LJ Collier, Rashad Penny, Jermaine Ifedi. We haven't had a good pick since Earl Thomas in the first round. Bruce Irvin, maybe Bruce Irvin. Yeah, but that was that's borderline. So I don't even pay attention to the Seahawks first round picks, because like the Patriots, they strike out just every single time. They overthink every single time. And I didn't trust when they took Rashad Penny, I was like, I don't trust a San Diego State running back after Donnell Pumphrey. After what you guys remember Donnell Pumphrey?
Darnell, yeah.
Oh yeah. I was like, I don't trust another San Diego State running back. Obviously, Rashad Penny's not, 35 pounds, and he's actually built a little bit, but the San Diego State system just got blown way out of proportion when it came to Rashad Penny. So,
and I always hate that kind of that lazy, there's a laziness to it to be like, oh, this, because you hear it with Justin Fields, and they're like, well, he's Ohio State quarterbacks. Am I right? And you're like, well, I mean, until Dwayne Haskins, the last Ohio State quarterback drafted in the first round was a dude named Art Schlichter from the 80s who got busted for gambling or something. So I'm like, it's not an apples to apples kind of thing. But I still, and so I don't like saying and it's fun. It's a fun thing to be like, hey, Sandy, and I agree. But at the same time, it's when you're choosing between him and a guy who dominated the SEC, always factor but he's dominating the SEC. It's when you these quarterbacks, I get it. The whole reason, when you pick, I would have picked Deshaun Watson over Patrick Mahomes. I had that was my evaluation.
Yeah.
I'm we've seen Deshaun Watson go out and dominate Alabama and do all this stuff, and he's been amazing. Why would you not draft him? Patrick Mahomes could be good. So when you're doing an apples that I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes is going to be terrible because of Texas Tech quarterbacks in the past and nobody's been good. But when you've got two guys that you can comparably I'm going to lean towards the guy that was dominating in a national championship game. But that's just me. Yeah. I think that you could have done that with Nick Chubb. That was the one. I'm not Rashad Penny's skilled and everything, but yeah.
No, you're right.
I agree.
You're right. Yeah. Well, it's just he's injured all the time. It's like we can't even make like a judgment on how he was as a draft pick. He actually, I think this was end of 2018, end of 2019, when we were getting into that playoff run. He actually stepped up big time after Chris Carson got injured, and he was playing well for the end of the game. And then he just got injured again. So it's just I can't even which is very ironic because we drafted, the whole reason of drafting Rashad Penny was because Chris Carson had an injury history. Our running backs always see, no matter what, every single year since Marshawn Lynch left, we will at some point in the season be down to our RB4. At some point. Every year it happens. Like, you can bet on it. You can set your watch to it. The Seahawks will somehow have to pick up a free agent that will start for them in like week 10.
JD Dallas is playing.
JD Dallas.
DJ Dallas, excuse me.
And then, or you could just pick up another 40-year-old Marshawn Lynch for his third run.
There it is.
Fourth, fifth run at being another Seattle running back. Oh my gosh. Gage, you wanted to ask him some fantasy stuff? Sorry.
No, you're fine. With that, I think we are finally going to get into your neck of the woods with some fantasy stuff. We talked about Sony Michel and we talked about that trade, but I'm a little more interested in, you said that you think that he would be a better option, obviously, than Darnell Henderson for the Rams. What do you think about that Patriots backfield? What do you think about JJ Taylor, Damien Harris? How have they jumped up since his departure?
Damien Harris always had a little bit of juice, and I think people were looking at him. He's a good player, so I love him. I think that he's one of those guys that, for whatever reason, I know why he falls, but he falls through the cracks because people always want to say like, oh, I never trust a Patriots receiver or a running back, excuse me. And I'm like, that I get it, but at the same time, like, understand the price that you're paying. Like, the volatility of Patriots running backs is baked into the price, because for a team that runs as much as they do, you would think that their running backs would go in the first or second round, but because there is some volatility, they go in the 7th or 8th round. And honestly, if you pay attention to the way the Patriots game plan against teams, it's not the unsolvable riddle that everybody thinks that it is. And so I equated JJ Taylor, who is a player who I like very much, and was propping him up. And everybody, clown emoji, you don't know what you're talking about. Sony Michel gets traded. They're like, oh, well, it's the other guy. And they'll find some other running back. And I'm like, no. JJ Taylor is the player that I'm looking at. And to me, he kind of, he would be their kind of Rex Burkhead type of running back. And they loved Rex Burkhead. And they did, they really went into him. They loved him. Rex Burkhead's biggest issue was the injuries. So I really love him for that reason. And then some guy, here comes the Twitter expert, and he's like, well, Rex Burkhead, if you take away his 3-touchdown game with Cam, he didn't play good with Cam. I'm like, okay, so you're basically saying, like, if you remove all the touchdowns that Rex Burkhead scored, he didn't score any touchdowns. I'm like, but that's the point. It's like, I'm not drafting JJ Taylor. First of all, I'm not drafting him before the 15th round. So basically, he's a free player. Like, I'm not telling you to draft JJ Taylor in the first. I'm saying he's a bench guy, and you have to know when to deploy him. Like, you have to be like, that Rex Burkhead game was that was an easy call. Like, if you weren't playing Rex Burkhead in a season-long league, if you had him, or if you weren't playing him in DFS, then you're not going to win any money. Like, that was one of the easier calls of the season. Like, they had a couple of guys down. The matchup, we're like, okay, they're going to go Rex Burkhead here. This is a Rex Burkhead game. Like, Evan Silva's really good at this too, of being like, oh, this is the Rex Burkhead game. This is a James White game. You can kind of tell. That's the way. And so you shouldn't just necessarily dismiss teams like, I can't figure this out. Like, I don't want anything to do with Patriots running backs. It's like, okay, I'll take them. I don't want anything to do with Texans receivers. It's like, well, you're not thinking about it the right way. I love Brandon Cooks this season because the Texans are awful. Whomever their quarterback is, if it's Tyrod Taylor or Davis Miles, they're going to have to throw the ball 50 times a game. And you know who they're going to be targeting the most? Brandon Cooks, because he's a good receiver. Like, this is exactly the kind of fantasy player you should be looking at. Why is his ADP in the 12th round? Who are you drafting in the 10th round that's going to be better than Brandon Cooks? Who are you drafting in the 6th round? who's going to be better than Brandon Cooks? Like, this is insane. Like, I like to approach my receivers this season much the same way that the WWE looks at their veterans. Like, if you ever watch a WWE show, it's like Edge, Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, like they go Cena, they go veterans. So after I get past a certain point in these fantasy leagues, I'm drafting every Robbie Anderson, Corey Davis, Marvin Jones, and of course the guy I was just talking about, Brandon Cooks. It's like watching the Expendables. Like, oh, all the old guys, all the fellow olds like me. But those are the guys that are getting a ton of targets, and they're in a great situation. Like, if people, I don't want any Jets. I'm like, that's just stupid. Like, their defense, their secondary sucks. They're going to have to throw the ball a ton. Zach Wilson, like, I would suggest to anybody who's playing fantasy, and I know you don't like to carry two quarterbacks, I'm carrying Zach Wilson, who I think could end up being this year's Justin Herbert. I know people love Justin Fields. I know people love Trey Lance. You know who's starting week 1? Zach Wilson. The other two guys, not so much. And I'll take Corey Davis. And if I don't get Corey Davis, I'll take Elijah Moore, and I'll wait, because by the end of the season, Elijah Moore will finally break out, and they'll be putting up fantasy points, and they'll be like, who could have seen this coming? I don't know. Anybody who pays attention. Like, these are the kind of guys that you want. So that's just me.
Let me write that down. Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
I want to ask you a question that may or may not have to do with my team. All right. Gun to your head. You had to take a Bucs running back.
Yeah.
Who are you taking? Are you taking Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones?
I'm taking Giovanni Bernard. I really think that I think he's going to end up being the guy who could be that James. I know it's lazy to be like, he's going to be the James White. Tom Brady really loves dumping the ball off to his running back. And if you ever saw it last year, anytime they tried to throw the ball to Fournette or Ronald Jones, Tom Brady was pissed. And to me, I feel like there's a reason why they went out and got Giovanni Bernard. Tom Brady knows how good he is. He's constructing this team. He's bringing the players in. Listen, we love Chris Godwin and we love Mike Evans. But when Antonio Brown shows up, that's who Tom's throwing to, because that's who he wanted there. That's why Antonio Brown led the team in targets per game, receiving yards per game, because Tom loves him. Gronk getting featured a lot as well. They bring in Giovanni Bernard. That tells me Tom is telling us, draft Giovanni Bernard. So I pass both those guys. I don't take Rojo. I don't take Leonard Fournette. People are enamored with Leonard Fournette's playoff run. That's going to be a mistake. Eventually, some point during the season, people are going to be like, hey, the hot name, Giovanni Bernard. Nobody saw this coming. And I swear to God, when they start saying nobody saw this coming, I'm going to show up, just knocking on the door. Hey, everybody, we talked about this. Like, of course he did. And if he blows up, obviously, I will own this. It's fine. It'll be another rank 313 moment, but I will own it if I'm wrong. But I like Giovanni Bernard.
All right. So I have it ready right now. Should I drop Ronald Jones for Giovanni Bernard?
Oh, my God.
I'll do it right now on this episode.
But you already drafted. You've already invested the capital. Who else is on your team that you can drop? Like, you might as well keep. Like, there's somebody.
I have Chuba Hubbard, but that's just because I have him handcuffed to Christian McCaffrey.
All right, so you got to keep him.
Yeah. I could do Cam Akers. I can drop him. That was purely. I'm in a keeper league, so I took him late just in case I wanted a very valuable keeper. So we have IR in my fantasy league, so I have him as taking up the IR spot. Alexander Madison, but I like him as insurance in case Dalvin Cook gets injured. I don't know. Maybe I'll drop Jamar Chase.
No, don't. No. Right. Don't drop Jamar Chase.
Okay. Well, I'll figure it. Adam Troutman. I know. Is that one? No.
Ooh. I mean, who's your starting tight end?
My starting tight end is Noah Fant.
I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, I wouldn't want to carry two tight ends. Yeah. But that's just me.
Okay. All right. That's fair. You know what? I'll drop Troutman. All right. There it goes. We're going through right now.
When Troutman breaks out, you're gonna be like, "This son of a."
I know. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna DM you, Adam. I'm like, you cost me my fantasy season. I'm kidding. No,
that's Gage's guy.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I've been talking up Adam Troutman. I'm a Saints guy, so
yeah.
Big Adam Troutman fan here.
Yeah.
All right, Adam. So injury over the past 2 weeks now. Travis Etienne suffered a foot injury. He's got put on IR. He's going to be out for the season. Real unfortunate because I thought he had a chance to maybe even push for Rookie of the Year because of how dynamic he is. So what do you think this injury does for James Robinson? Can James Robinson repeat a season like he had last year? I know some people are skeptical because he was he's an undrafted free agent. Obviously he didn't have a crazy good season, but he passed that 1,000-yard mark. He got the job done. I had him on my fantasy team last year.
Yeah.
What do you think this does for James Robinson?
Yeah, he had 975 rushing yards, something like that. I believe that, what we saw very early on is that they were willing to go back to James Robinson in the first 2 downs and use him the way that they used him last season, running between the tackles. I think where his ADP currently falls is where he belongs. And anybody who is in a keeper league and you still held on to him, well, that's pretty cool. So you're probably fine. You're going to get a guy who's going to get probably the most carries. I don't think that Carlos Hyde is really going to threaten or anything like that. The player who could end up benefiting the most from Travis Etienne being out might be Laviska Shenault. And I think what we saw in that first preseason game with Trevor Lawrence, we saw him drop back, get sacked, fumbled. He recovered his own fumble. The next play that they called was a quick pass to Laviska Shenault, which to me kind of like, okay, that's interesting because they wanted to establish some confidence back with Trevor Lawrence and get him back to feeling well and comfortable in the pocket. So they designed a play for him, quick hitter to Laviska Shenault. And I go, okay, well, that's the role that they envision for Laviska. That's good. And if you think about how they were trying to convert or at least use Travis Etienne as a receiver out of the backfield, if that's ends up being picked up not by James Robinson, because I'm not sure that's his skill set, but instead Laviska Shenault, that's going to be the player that I'm probably going to end up going with.
Really? I mean, him and Travis Etienne sort of fill that gadget player role because I saw that Travis Etienne was listed as a wide receiver just a few weeks ago. Like I didn't know what role they were going to play him in, but all right, write that one down too. Laviska Shenault Jr. There it is.
Yeah, we should have gone into this podcast with like a notepad, a pen. There's a ton of good ideas going around right here.
Thankfully, you're recording it, so that's good.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. But we want to get it before everybody else knows it, before we post it, and then the world knows what Adam Rank is thinking.
That's true.
Yeah.
So sticking with running backs here, we've got another team that's got an interesting running back situation, and I'm seeing the majority of people say Zach Moss is the guy for the Bills. Do you agree with that? Do you think that Devin Singletary still has some value, or would you just go all in on Zach Moss?
Yeah, everybody loves Zach Moss, and this feels like one I'm going to miss out on. When everybody's, there's a concert that everybody's going to, and they're paying full price and everything, and I'm like, yeah, I might just miss this show. Yeah. I still believe that whenever they get near the goal line, that it's going to end up being Josh Allen, who's going to call his own number, and it's going to hurt a little bit of the touchdown potential for players like Devin Singletary, who's allergic to the end zone. Zach Moss might not be the goal line back. I think it is going to be Josh Allen who's the goal line back. And, last year they really loved going to Gabriel Davis too. Gabriel Davis had a lot of touchdowns. They don't have reliable tight ends. Dawson Knox is fine, but they don't go to him often enough. And I think second year Gabe Davis has the ability to go out there and catch 8 to 9, 10 touchdowns. Kind of, again, eating into the production that would normally go to one of the running backs. So for me, it's just a situation that I'm avoiding. I just don't like the price of it. I'm going to let somebody else pay that, and then I'm going to look somewhere else. Maybe take a veteran receiver in that spot. That's where you start to draft your Robbie Andersons and players like that. So I'm like, I see him there. It's kind of like when you go to a diner and you see the BLT, you're like, it's fine. I know it's sort of like, okay, but it's like, it's not jumping out at me. Mm-hmm. It's not something that I really need to go out and feel like I have to draft.
Hate it.
I don't hate it.
You're not going to jump into it either.
Yeah. I'm going to pass. I'm going to let somebody else take that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I gotcha. Do you think Matt Breida plays into that backfield at all, or you think he's just a wash?
Oh man, I think that's just a camp body. I think that's just somebody like, oh, okay, yeah, Matt Breida's there. Like, yeah, I don't know. I would rather look, if there was some young guy who was kind of fighting for a chance, kind of like what we saw in New England, where they have a couple of young guys, including JJ Taylor, who are now starting to fight for carries and everything like that. I don't think that's the situation in Buffalo. I think we know enough about Matt Breida to know, like, yeah, that's cool. That's a practice player.
Mm-hmm. Before Raheem Mostert found a home in San Francisco, I could have sworn Matt Breida was going to have a type of career like Aaron Jones would have had. Like, I thought he was that next guy, just never panned out.
Yeah, it just sometimes never works out for these guys, unfortunately.
Mm.
All right. We want to thank Adam Rank for, of course, coming on the podcast. Probably one of the best guests we've had so far. Super fun time with him. And if you guys are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, make sure to go rate and review the show if you did enjoy it. If you didn't, then you don't have to. Maybe you want to tell us how much you hate us, give us 1 star, whatever. We don't care. Just go and rate it and review it. We really appreciate it. It'll help get out the show to even more people so we can get even more supporters like you.
And if you don't have the Overtime app yet, I don't know how many times we have to tell you, you're probably not a very good student because you're not retaining any of this information. It is in the link in our bios. Go download the Overtime app. It's a fantastic app. You can play some prop bets totally free. You can just check out all of the news and everything going on in sports. It's a great app. Go download it now.
And guys, make sure to go download the Thrive Fantasy app for NFL Week 1. They are doing $140,000 in guaranteed prizes. That's just the first week by using our promo code TOTALLY. That's TOTALLY. Or by clicking the link in any of our TikTok bios, it'll take you straight to the app. And by using our promo code, you'll receive 100% instant first deposit match up to $100. If you want to pay $20, that's another $20 in your account right there. Go check out the app.
Yeah, and that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.